Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us on Food for Thought. This is an episode that is going to be aired on January 4th. And my name is Sunil Chandy. And this is Christ Episcopal Church, a ministry out of Christ Episcopal Church called Food for Thought. And we thank you for being a part of this experience with us. And so today is this is the beginning of a new year. It's the beginning of a new experience for many of us. And so we're still here. And this ministry, which is over 19 months long now, is something that we've been really engaging in, and we're going to lean into even more because we're still not only in the pandemic, but there's so much that we've done through this ministry, and so many connections that we've made, and so many people that have benefited from this, and not so many others out in the church, but also I personally have enjoyed my conversations here with all the guests that we've had. So there are some great insights that are being accessed by many, many different people through this ministry. And so we're going to continue doing it. And so this experience is a great one for us. And so to begin off this year, what I thought we'd do this time is continue or to have a year in review with none other than our Sharon Younkin, who is our therapist who comes on every 2 weeks. And so we've taped this ahead of time because it's going to be aired on Tuesday, January 4th. And Sharon is here with us. So Ben, please bring Sharon. Sharon, how are you?
Neil, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Is my mic okay? Do I sound okay?
I think you sound good.
Okay, great. I didn't know if I heard like a back.
There's a little bit of a feedback back. Do you hear that, Ben?
Yeah, I do. It'll fix itself in a minute. Yep, okay. You're good.
Great.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Yes. Thank you, Ben. Grateful for Ben too, and Father Sunil.
So grateful for Ben. Ben is so important for us, and he's even been creative while we were on vacation. Look at it, the red.
We have never looked better. Look at us.
You always look good, but I love the red. Really
I don't know, Father Sunil. I was reviewing some of our episodes over the past year.
Well, you know what? We keep it real. I think that's the thing.
That's right. Everyone got to see my pandemic hair, no haircut for a year.
I love that.
Yes, we're keeping it real. All right. So
well, tell us about the year. What did you think?
Yes, this was a good exercise. And, I do this with my clients and I recommend, I'm actually I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's helpful to me. And thinking about where we've been, where we're going. And I'm hoping that all of you will do the same. I do this exercise with my clients where we talk about where were you a year ago? What did you learn over the past year? How have you grown? What lessons will you take forward? And where do you want to go over the next year?
Yeah.
And so this is a wonderful exercise to do. I decided to focus on the conversations that Father Sunil and I had, because our mission, I believe from the beginning, has been to provide mental health information and support during this really challenging time for all of us, and to help inform all of you and hope that we all grow together in this journey. And so it's helpful to review some of the things too that we've talked about that might be helpful. I'll probably throw in there ways that I've grown personally as well, because that makes it a little more interesting and real, like Father Sunil is saying. So let me go back to, the first thing I saw when I went back over the past year was that dance video we had.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that came up. I loved that. We ended the last year, December 2020, with that beautiful online Christmas bazaar that the church had, which to me was so representative of being resilient during this time. And then there was that dance video with Father Sneal and Christy and Dorothy and Caswell and Tammy and David and Wendy and Lisa and Allison and Dana and their baby and me. And so that just really started things off on the right foot for me. And then in February, we had some guests. We had my college friends. We do that walking group online. We've been doing that since the beginning of the pandemic. And we all talked about the importance of social support, self-care, play, mindfulness, radical collaboration. You know, Margaret Huang, who now is probably one of my closest friends, I only knew her as I didn't know her very well when we were at school, but throughout the course of the pandemic, we've gotten very close by this collaborating and providing social support and doing this walking group on our Facebook group online. And we'll have our college reunion in May, and she and I will be spending a lot of time together. And then also my dear friend Sarah, that I've been very close to for years. So I think that was, we started off with talking about ways that people can try to increase social support and as well self-care, and that's so important right now. Then in February 15th, we had Dr. Johnson, the director of RICBT. Remember we had him on?
Oh, yes, definitely. I love that conversation.
Yeah, he did a little bit of a slideshow presentation, and he talked about cognitive behavioral therapy and how it can be really helpful. What were some of the keys from that? At that point, actually, we had 430,000 deaths due to COVID. Wow. This was February 15th. But he talked about how CBT can be helpful during difficult times because it keeps us open to the possibility of wisdom. Actually, you said this. You talked about you were keeping your mind open to the possibility of wisdom that you did not understand yet. And so I really appreciated the openness that you brought, Father Sneal, to you're open to learning from maybe others and experiences that they may have had. And you talked about finding joy and hope and connection. But he talked about CBT, putting words on feelings, name it to tame it, the power of support and empathy, alternative perspectives, pattern recognition. Then in March 1st, we talked about the model of emotions, why emotions are so important and how they work. We talked about cognitive loops that people get into, habit loops, ways of thinking, worry loops, an app that can help with anxiety by Judson Brewer, who's a psychiatrist at Brown University.
I remember that.
Remember Unwinding Anxiety. So that's a tool that people could access. In March, again, we talked about, that was the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic.
That's right.
This was March 8th. And we talked about the miracle of vaccinations. Because we remember before that point, before March, we were still not really vaccinated. We were still really kind of in lockdown. And we were mainly doing everything online, church services online, a lot of that. And you and I talked about the miracle of vaccinations and the advantages. And we were exploring whether or not folks were fearing, whether or not fear may be getting in the way of them making a decision that would be helpful to them. Of course, respecting everyone's individual decision, yet sometimes, we have to also make sure that decisions are not being made from a place of fear. And you talked about how God works through science and vaccines are an act of love and put out there to save lives. And then the end of March, Dr. Thomas came on.
Yes.
Remember the psychiatrist from RICBT?
Yes, yes.
And she talked about in our field what psychiatrists do and how they provide medication when it's needed and also coordinate care. When she talked about African-American mental health. And so here at RICBT, we also have hired more medication providers. So now we have additional psychiatrists and nurse practitioners. So folks should feel free if they need that help to reach out. Then in April, we had Deirdre Murphy on. She talked about mental health challenges with our teens and young people.
Yeah.
Because we know, and I think it's played out throughout the year. We could see at that point that we were going to have some challenges with that age group.
Yeah.
And still, they're the ones ages 6 to 24 who are most likely to report mental health struggles, increased mental health difficulties. Should I pause here? And
No, I think I think what I'm thinking about more than anything else, as we're talking about this. I mean, and in the moment, I always think about just the particular show, but then giving this view of a look back helps me to realize one thing. I mean, I'm just grateful that I had you as a conversational partner.
Yeah.
To kind of help figure out things and challenges, and because when we're looking at mental health in among children, among adults, among minority groups, among all of us that are facing this challenge, it's almost overwhelming if we look at it from all those, from a larger perspective. But we're doing that with these simple conversations, with these and my experience of these conversations is that it's always been like, yes, we've got a challenge, but we also got each other.
Yes.
And we've got God who comes in the midst of this challenge to say we can move and learn and grow even through this experience.
Right. Yes, I totally agree. Yeah.
And so I'm just grateful. I mean, just as you're going over these episodes, I remember about Dr. Johnson, and I remember about all the various speakers that we've had, and I remember especially speaking with Margaret and Sarah, and how they connected with you, and you guys were actually from different parts of the country connecting with each other. What our conversations, as I think about it, is mirroring what was happening to many of us over that year as we connected with one another.
I think that's so true. As I was looking through my Facebook posts to prepare for this, it really did mirror what I could see going on nationally. And I think at that time, when we still really hadn't opened up much, and we were really getting tired after a year, before a lot of the vaccines were out, there was an intensity. There was like an intensity online of people doing a lot online, the Christmas Bazaar and these walking groups, and having colleaages come in and share.
And Sarah, her planks, doing planks all over the place.
Yes. Sarah was doing her planking, right? And I think that was probably true for a lot of folks. And then we also, in the midst of everything, had different sectors that were being hit particularly hard. Minorities and different women, because the pandemic brought to light, I think, lower income folks brought to light challenges that people were going through. And so I think you and I really were there were so many different topics in so many different areas to address.
Yeah.
I think we kind of did that each month when we would meet. And there was Mother's Day, speaking of another group that we were trying to honor and support a lot of different groups. Certainly all of us have been struggling in different ways, for sure. But we were also trying to provide, when different events happen throughout the year, we were also trying to recognize and support those folks as well, and reach out and provide ministry. Right?
Definitely.
And Mother's Day, May 10th, we talked about the majority of our essential workers during COVID were women, according to an analysis that was done in the New York Times using census data. that 9 out of 10 of our nurses and nursing assistants were women. Respiratory therapists, pharmacists, pharmacy aides, social workers, 78%, grocery store and checkout, fast food folks, 66%, 76% of our teachers. So we were really kind of tried to honor how hard this has been on mothers and certainly all of us again, but like really also trying to honor those groups that were experiencing some additional stress. And then at the end of May, we celebrated the Mental Health Month. May is the Mental Health Month, and Tools to Thrive, that was a website where people could go online to get extra help. And we talked a bit about Oprah's The Me You Can't See. So it's been one of the joys for me has been to be an advocate for mental health during this time.
Yeah.
And tremendously important. Yeah.
I think, and the thing is, I think also, I think it's not actually done, right? I mean, this is something that's important for us. I mean, I know that right now, one of the groups that I think I would love to interview with you actually is healthcare workers. I mean, maybe we could get our local doctor and from Wesley Hospital or some nurses who are dealing with this crisis on, who is a first responder in this.
Oh, so true. So true. Quite honestly, I've kind of stayed away from them right now because they've been so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so, but I think you're right. I mean, I think we absolutely have to figure out a way to honor them and bring them on. I mean, they
I think because my wife is a pharmacist and she works at the Hartford Health Care System, and she struggles with the pharmacy department and also with the nurses. She sees all the nurses and the doctors and all of the ancillary people that we don't necessarily think as working in the hospital, and as pivotal or important, but they are so important. Like the orderlies and the sextons, the custodial department, all of those people that we don't necessarily, when we think about a hospital, we think about a doctor, a nurse, a doctor, nurse, and maybe a pharmacist at times, but a doctor, nurse. But there's so many people who support the healthcare system, and how that is so being really stressed in a negative way.
Yeah.
And how we might be able to help.
Yes, that's so important. That's one of my concerns now when we have these spikes like we do currently with the virus. We have a spike going on currently, is just how much can our first responders and our frontline workers in these hospitals and how much can these folks take? I mean, they are just, it's been unrelenting in terms of the amount of stress they've been under. Yeah.
I think like what we've done is been able to help people normalize the conversation. And I think that's important. And I'm hoping that people, also normalize this idea that therapy is important. It's not something that is left for people who might be broken in somewhere, because we're all broken. Mm-hmm. We all need to talk. We all need to express. We all need someone to help us sift through these conversations that we have in our mind, to help us deal with how we move forward day to day. And so I'm hoping that that's one thing that people grasp hold of, that this is good.
Yes.
That the conversation is good. And God created communities in order to share knowledge and insight with,
Right. Yes. Well, I'm definitely going to bookmark that. I'm going to think about that, the whole idea of getting we can talk about the first responders, and I think that's a great idea. Yes. Yeah. And sharing that. Yeah. Sharing knowledge for sure. we in June we did a Father's Day one, and we talked a little bit actually about that book that I had been reading, Rules of Estrangement.
Oh yeah.
Which was pretty powerful. I thought that 25% of American families struggle with estrangement, and that was a theme at the time when I was working with folks that seemed to be coming up, and also and then that around that time was when we also went back to church when the choir came back.
Yeah.
And so that was a really moving thing for me personally, to be back in the church and singing. And that was a miracle, really. After I had been out of my office actually for almost a year and a half, I was seeing people on Zoom, and then came back, and we were now, I won't be for a couple of months because I'm going to Florida, but we were I have been seeing folks in person twice a week now since June, but that was so strange to be, not seeing my folks in person for so long.
Yeah.
Then we had Margaret on in July 19th, because she talked about mental health in the Asian community during COVID, because that's also been something that came up over the past year. And she talked about how your friendship, this is to quote her, your friendship, your kindness to your neighbor can change someone's life. I thought that was a really powerful comment or quote from that show. And we talked about service and volunteering. And the volunteering, again, is always a great way to help your own emotional well-being. And then we had Dr. Allison Hart-Young on in August, and she talked about teachers, because they also have been first responders to our children,
Yes.
actually, and how much they contribute to the mental health of our children. In September, 4 things you can do over the age of 50 to feel better. Then in October, self-compassion was a big theme. I was doing my self-compassion group, and that's still a big theme. That's going to be a big theme for the next 2 years as we deal from the fallout of all of this. Mindfulness, common humanity, and kind self-talk are key to us to remember. In November, we had the PTSD show with PTSD and veterans. We talked about interpersonal challenges during the holidays. And then December, the holiday show this year, I did choose something that was a little bit more, I was really thinking about the folks who can sometimes feel left out during the holidays.
Yeah.
Folks who had losses and who are grieving and mourning right now, and just trying to provide hope, because I think that's a big thing for me too. We don't ever want people to feel alone, and we don't want them to feel like they're a burden. Those are two of the things that we don't want to happen.
Yeah.
So in your world, in your community, do whatever you can to help people feel connected and to not feel like a burden, because that's really important when someone's really suffering and struggling. So.
Wow, we did a lot.
We did a lot, right?
Yeah.
We did a lot.
Again, I've enjoyed it because by ourselves or by myself, it would seem overwhelming. But in conversation with you, Sharon, it's been really joyful. And it's interesting because I think people are also, in my groups of people that I meet with, one of the insight that I've been kind of getting from them is the idea, before people, at least in my conversations, people seem to shy away from challenges. But nowadays, even maybe it's a byproduct of this COVID, but more and more people are talking about engaging the challenges and moving forward through them, learning what we can from them and moving forward. And maybe it's because of my inclination to hear that in conversations, but I hear it more and more in media, and then also in personal conversations. I hear it even from my kids. My kids are talking about this. I mean, we also I had this wonderful interaction. I had this wonderful breakfast with your daughter, Talon, who was visiting from England, and we were talking about it. And she was also, she's a young adult, and she's also articulating that. And
right. This is such a powerful point you're making, Father Sunil. So we know our young people, have suffered quite a bit, and we, being older and hopefully wiser, we have to help them keep perspective. We have to help them understand that life has periods of time that will have struggles, and you have to learn how to feel comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And continue to be persistent, and continue to allow for your feelings, of course, validate that, allow for your feelings, and also figure out how can you be flexible, how can you problem solve, how can you think creatively, that whole balance that we're talking about. And we can help them to see that. Sometimes when you're in your 20s, you think there's only one path.
Yeah.
This is the one. If I, oh, that was the one, that was the key to me having the perfect life, and I didn't do it, or that didn't work out the way I wanted to. No. There are many paths any one of us could live to have a good life. I could have been a flamenco dancer.
That would have been interesting.
Or I could have been a gospel singer. I don't know. Like, or an anthropologist. I mean, there are lots of things that I love. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at flamenco dancing, but but some kind of dancer, I would have been very happy. In other words, and I'm very happy doing what I do now. But we need to understand that things are temporary. Struggle is temporary, and we can learn from it. And yes, we will feel pain, but that's okay. You can do it. You can allow for painful emotions, and you can get through them, and you can get to the other side, and you'll get stronger by doing that. I think this is what you're talking about. And then we can face things. Yeah. And so I love hearing you say that, and you're noticing that in others too.
I am noticing that. I mean, that's the thing that and I think that's a byproduct, or that's a product of the struggle that we're currently in. And I hope that we never lose that insight,
Yeah. And speaking of the struggle we're in, as we look forward, I wanted to mention something. I saw an interesting post online, and folks could Google it. His name is Nick Christakis, and he's a Yale sociologist, and he talks about respiratory pandemics, and typically they consist of 3 phases. The first phase is the immediate wave. It sounds like the first 2 years, where we're near the end of the first phase, where people are close to herd immunity. Eventually, he's probably by the middle of 2022, he talks about most people will either be vaccinated or have had the virus. And then the second phase will go from 2022 to 2024, where he says the clinical, psychological, and social aftershocks of the virus will occur.
Wow.
So the clinical, psychological, and social aftershocks. So it's good that we've been preparing for the last 2 years. You guys, we've been working on our tools. We've been preparing and having these discussions, because the next 2 years, we're really going to have to apply them.
Yeah.
And we're going to, it's one thing to listen, but I'm also a big believer in application. And then 2024, he talked about post-pandemic, where people will pretty much be celebrating and living it up. So.
Well, hopefully by that time, we'll also be able to kind of keep the insights that we've learned through these challenges too.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be another challenge that's going to happen sometime. That's life. Life is always filled with challenges.
It is.
And how we work through them is just as important as getting to the other side of them.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree, 100%. Yeah.
Sharon, I'm just grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you're going to be here with us as we continue to have these conversations. But I know that this time is now ending for us. And so hopefully we will meet with each other in about 2 weeks, and we'll have another conversation.
Yeah, we'll continue on this journey and see where it takes us, right?
Yeah, amen.
Mm.
Thank you, Sharon. God bless you, okay?
God bless you too.
All right. I think we've ending our time together, and so let's end with this prayer that we've always ended with, and it's a prayer written by Bishop Thomas Brown of Maine. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you traveled through towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health to quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, counselors, and caregivers. We ask this all in your name, Jesus. Amen. Join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, go in peace to love and serve God. Let this year be filled with joy, and hope, and light. The world needs this type of light, so pass it on.
Thanks for watching. Did you know that you can join Christ Church from anywhere in the world? If you're feeling connected to what we're doing, email us today at communicate@christchurchwesterly.org.